I have a question for you. And so, we're talking about business, we're talking about social work. What is it that you think social work and social workers needs to learn from the business sector?
What was interesting in doing the MBA classes at the same time was that I think there's a lot that the MBA students could learn from the MSW students and vice versa, right? Because this is the way that a lot of business is going, especially, in entrepreneurship being something that has a global impact. You have leaders like Bill Gates and you have Jeff Skoll from eBay having wonderful institutes that have tons of money that are actually doing real things. And I think with the MSW students, there should be a requirement to take a few business classes. And I know that Columbia talked about this business minor on his website. And when I, was trying to do my due diligence before picking what school to go to, yet the day I arrived, they were like, sorry, the MBA administration doesn't call us back. We don't really know how to do this dual program. And I was like, I already gave you guys my check. This was like one of the deciding factors. So again, because you're not going to help me, I'm going to have to advocate for myself and do this on my own. So I walked over to the MBA program and I figured it out. It took a lot of time and energy and was frustrating, but I figured it out. And I think that's another really big lesson for the MSW students is it becomes so comfortable and so easy advocating for others. You've got to learn how to advocate for yourself. And that's all through knowing self-worth and truly understanding what your time is worth and what your skill sets are worth. And when somebody says no, the same way if somebody said no to your client, you'd advocate for them, figuring out the resources and the ways to get what you need. Not everything is easy, but you've got to keep persevering, be resilient, and learn to advocate for yourself. You need to come first.
So what do you think it is that then business can learn from social work?
I think more and more, and this is a lot of what my practice focuses on, is business is becoming very much so relationship oriented. The concept of relational intelligence is becoming wildly important in determining a business's success. And in the example I gave you in the beginning of this conversation about, co-founder conflict being 65% of startups fail because of this co-founder conflict. That's, again, not being able to manage a relationship well. And so I think social workers are great at understanding relationship building, picking up on social cues, nuances with people. What is the root of somebody's need? The issue not being the issue. Somebody comes to me saying, I need help with this. Asking the right questions to actually understand what are they really needing. And that is something that business leaders are needing to learn more and more. We're measuring success in a business on things now that are intangible. Relationship building and relationship success isn't something that's measurable. It used to be productivity, something you can count. And now business, the biggest concept kind of affecting a business's bottom line is relationships with outside partners, as well as internally within their leading team, and as well as with employees. So there's a lot of collaboration and overlap that could make businesses much more successful if there was a conversation instead of you're over there in your business world and I'm over here in my social work world. It's not beneficial.
So you mentioned about social workers knowing their worth, and I think I hear social workers all the time saying you have to know your worth, and I'm self-confident, but I think what you're talking about, what we're talking about, is knowing how much financially, like the moolah side of things, in tandem with your self-confidence and being able to articulate your prices. But, I'm big on entrepreneurship and just social workers kind of figuring out their value on paper as well. So how would you say, like, if you were talking to your colleagues back at university or to viewers of this channel, like, what do you think is the entryway into there? Because I remember when I first started learning about, this thing called a wealth mindset, and understanding that business people or wealthy people actually think differently than people who don't have money. Like, it was kind of mind blowing, and it took me a while to find an in. Like, it's like, well, how do you do that? How do you think that way? What do you mean I'm not charging enough? Like, how do I, if you're talking about positioning myself, what is that and how do I do that? I don't know if I'm being clear, but I guess my question is, how might you advise a social worker to kind of either start to educate themselves or make their way into this arena of practice that you're talking about?
Oh, I think one of the big qualifiers of building that confidence is carving a niche for yourself, understanding what are you passionate about and what are you good at, right? Because you could be passionate about something and be horrible at it. So if that's the direction you want to go, then you've got to sit there, study, read books, do whatever it is to craft that skill set, right? So that you can pursue your passion and also have a skill and an attribute to give to that business sector, or whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. The thing that I find to be really frustrating, and is also a big reflection of these social workers not understanding business, is I've had people reach out to me saying, you know, I love what you're doing. Like, I want to do it. And so I'll ask them questions like, what experience have you had with founders that makes you feel like you could work with executives? And it's none, you know, and it doesn't mean that you have to have the experience I had to be relevant in this space, but you have to have done some reading, some workshops, some type of work with the demographic that you want to work with, just like people that potentially were raised in marginalized communities find that they can help because they've gotten the education and they've really built their voice to advocate for these marginalized communities. That's their safe zone. My safe zone is founders and executives, you know? And so if you want to transition into that, you've got to do the work. You can't just say, oh, this is something I want to do because it's going to make me money, and have zero foundation or understanding of what your worth is. You know, like, I am able to ask for a certain hourly rate because I know that my work works and that there are results, and it's all referral based from previous clients that are like, wow, Kathryn did X, Y, and Z for our business. They can do this for you too. And that's how you really start to build a reputation in the space as well.
I think that's brilliant advice. And on that note, you have carved out a niche for yourself, which I love. I asked you, you know, how do you classify yourself? And you said, I'm a founder's therapist. And I was like, yeah, but what do you do? How do you classify yourself? You're like, I'm a founder's therapist. So can you just,
it's something that I don't think it's a colloquialism yet, right? Yeah. Understanding that founders need help. And it's not just, I think what gets confusing too is I'm not just tending to anxiety, depression, and mental health issues with these founders. I have the business expertise too to help them actually launch a business, to work on their business plan, to work on their vision statement, to work on the rules of engagement, their roles and responsibilities, to create onboarding systems. I'm merging my background with business now with this understanding that I have of psychotherapeutic modalities and tool sets, so that when something comes up in conversation that's business related, but it's very clearly about an issue that they had with their father when they were 7, that's all of a sudden being triggered when this partner comes in, we're going to do a little inner child work, you know, or we're going to do some cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness techniques to get somebody out of certain headspaces and to work through, you know, their baggage. So
brilliant. I love it. And I think what it highlights for me is that you're bilingual, right? In this sense. So you speak business, but you also speak therapy. Like, you also, so when you hear the need then for like that inner child work that you said, when you hear the need for addressing that coming out in a business context, you understand because you speak business. Yeah. And so they might not be using the words, but you can still hear them, and you can communicate in a way that they can hear you. Would you agree?
I do. And I think that that's kind of business 101, right? Is looking at a landscape, seeing where windows of opportunities are, and then reflecting and seeing if you have the skill set to actually, reach out to that opportunity and make a name for yourself and carve out a niche for yourself. And so what I noticed was that every time I went to a therapist in the past, I remember with my co-founder being like, we need to go to therapy. And like, we both laughed. We were like, there's nobody out there that does this. You're sitting and you're talking about what's going on in your life, especially in a city like New York City, where everybody's identity is closely connected to their professional life. If you're going to a therapist and they have no idea what you're talking about, 45 minutes is up, and all you've done is explain your role in the business and educated them on what you're doing, and you haven't gotten to the root of the issue. And so me and my peers, I know, we're all really frustrated with our experiences with therapy. We knew we needed something, but we weren't getting it. And that left this huge window of opportunity for coaching to explode. Yet coaching has no certification, no licensure. Yes, you can take it upon yourself to go and get certified, but you don't need to. And a lot of clients don't know to ask. They just assume, oh, you're a coach, you've done some type of certification, and that's not the case. And so, just like, anybody that's listening to this, I saw a window of opportunity for psychotherapy and coaching to merge because both of them were kept so separate, yet their clients were the same, and needing help from both sides.
So when you consider your experience, your graduate school experience with the experience of your classmates, right? And we're talking a year or two on now. Do you notice any differences in terms of like quality of life or opportunities or satisfaction? Do you notice any differences between your classmates then that maybe didn't have your background and you, and where you feel like you're going?
I think a lot of my classmates are really struggling. And I think that there's something that's really going to have to shift with regard to the curriculum of the MSW program. I could tell when I was at school, things were already starting to shift. There was a lot of upheaval with like students protesting and like, the dean of the school was switched like twice while I was there. There was clearly dysfunction happening. And I think that it's because of students finding their voice and wanting more from the experience, and administration being like, oh, maybe we need to like change our curriculum from 1960 and update it a bit, to follow what's going on with the world. And so I also find that they are in these systems that are really broken and they're really frustrated. And I get that, which is why I feel instead of sitting and banging your head against the wall, go and do something that is actually fixing what is broken, and it's risky and it's scary. But once you've identified a problem, the opposite side of a problem is a solution. Therefore, you've identified the window of opportunity to start some type of business that heals the problem that you were being confronted with. And then that in of itself can spark what your business plan should be, because you're passionate about it. Again, you have to tap into what you're passionate about. If you're complaining every day about something, there's passion there. And so switch into a problem-solving mindset.
Yeah.
Write a business plan.
I remember though, like I said, I'm coming into this way of thinking now, maybe about 10 years or so. And I remember hearing, every problem is an opportunity. And I remember the first time I heard that, and they were speaking about opportunity in terms of business opportunity. And I thought it took me a while again to kind of wrap my head around how do I start to think about being solution focused and turning that into a product or a service. One of the things I wanted to ask you is, that social workers often say that they get into the profession because they want to help people, right? And your, like we talked about at the beginning of this conversation, your objective in pursuing your MSW was a little different when you came in. Do you see any challenges with that, or what do you think about that? I should say, I'll leave it as an open-ended question. What do you think about the majority of social workers coming into the profession to help people? The implication being that people are often less fortunate.
Yes.
Where does that leave us? Yeah.
So I think there's, my answer would be twofold with that. One is there are people from all socioeconomic backgrounds that need help. You know, it's not just for people that are struggling financially. And I think that there's stigma on both sides of that, right? I think what I am finding is that when I present myself as a therapist to these CEOs, there's a stigma around it. They don't want to say that they need help or that there's a mental health issue. And so then I, say I'm a consultant or whatever you want to call me, right? That like resonates with the business world. My ego aside, I don't care what you call me. Just let's work together and work through these issues. So I'm absolutely helping people and I'm making money helping people. Do I have a place in my heart where I want to work with impoverished communities, marginalized communities, communities at risk? Absolutely. But I know that the only way for me to have the big impact that I want to have on these communities is getting to the root of it. Whether that's through one day going into politics and affecting legislation, so getting really to the root of things, or amassing enough wealth where I can create a fund that I can just disperse money and not just write checks, but follow up on it and make sure that the change is actually happening the way that the community needs. Again, understanding what the community's needs are. I think a lot of times people that come in that are writing checks, they have their idea of what the community needs, and it's completely different than what the community needs. So it's again, tapping into our therapy listening skills and understanding where to put that. But also on the side, like with my practice, 10% of what I make is going towards confidence building activities for children that are in communities that can't afford it. And really $15, $20 once a week, paying for a dance lesson, an art class, a singing lesson, whatever that is responsible for building confidence for that child. And I am a huge believer that all it takes is one person, one experience when you're young, ages 0 to about 7 to 11, that creates this unwavering confidence in you that you tap into throughout your adult life. And being able to give children the opportunity to be able to experience confidence building activities, whatever it is, for them to realize what their passion is. Their school may only give singing lessons and they really love to act, but giving them the opportunity to find what it is that connects with them, resonates with them, so that they can be entrepreneurs one day themselves, is important to me too.
I love that so much. And I think the irony is that a lot of people who pursue a social work degree or any degree in the helping professions can't afford to give back anymore, right? Yeah. Because they're not making the amount of money that will allow them to do anything more than maybe pay back their student loan and keep the roof over their house and send their kids to school and, the basics. So I love that you do that. And I love that you're passionate about that. Thank you so much.
Well, that's another thing that you tapped on for 2 seconds. The student loan thing really gets at me as well, because you have students that are paying just as much as the MBA students that, again, are doing the paid internship. Most of them don't even have to pay for their schooling. And they're also graduating and going into careers that are absolutely baseline, paying them a minimum 6-figure salary, right? Where then you have the MSW students not having paid internships, paying just as much, and they're not having their previous employees pay for it, taking on these massive loans that are masked as aid, student aid, which is not, it's a loan. And then being told you're 100% going to go out and cap 60 grand a year, maybe 100 grand. And that's like a huge deal. That's not a life to live.